A variable is a value that has a name. Before I explain this concept in more detail, let's look at a simple example. The let keyword is used to create a new variable, and the name of that variable must be placed after it. This code creates a new variable called x, and this process of creating a variable is known as a declaration. We declare that a new variable named x exists. X has not been given a value yet, but it already has a default value of undefined. Note that I'm not using undefined as a regular English word to describe the value of x. Undefined is a special JavaScript value that is given to variables when they are created but are not assigned any value. We can actually display this value with a console log, as we did in the Hello World example. This outputs undefined to the console, which is the actual value of x. You may have noticed that I did not use quotation marks around x as I had done with the phrase Hello World. If we add quotation marks around x, we get the letter x outputted to the console. The full meaning of the quotation marks will be discussed in a later video. For now, just know that using a variable's value requires not putting quotation marks around its name. To give a value to a variable, we use the equal sign, and this process is known as assignment. It is also possible to combine the declaration with the assignment. Giving an initial value is known as initialization. We can output the value with another console log. Note that the declaration must either happen together with the assignment, or the declaration must happen before. If we reverse the order, we get an error. Also note that it's possible to use an undeclared variable. We only get this error if you declare after use, but if you never declare it, you don't get an error and it actually works. However, you should actually never do this. This potentially can cause some problems. We won't discuss right now what kind of problems it can cause, but it is something that should be avoided, and it is commonly considered to be bad practice to use variables that have not ever been declared. It is possible to assign new values to variables that already have a value. For example, x can be assigned a value of 5, and then afterwards x can be assigned a value of 7. If you don't want to allow a variable to take any new values after its initial value has been set, we can use the const keyword to declare the variable instead of using let. However, there are some special exceptions in which it is possible to change the value despite the fact that it has been declared using the const keyword. We won't discuss those exceptions right now, just be aware that they exist. We have seen that variables can be given new values, but the let keyword is used only once with each variable. The let keyword creates the variable. Once it has been created, it exists and doesn't need to be created again. You can just give it new values by assigning it again. If you do try to redeclare a variable, you will get an error message. You may have noticed that we use several identical console logs, but they output different values because the value of x changes. This gives us a glimpse of the power of variables. You can write the exact same code to operate on different values by specifying the variable name in your code instead of writing the value. This is useful in a situation in which an operation has to be repeated many times with different values. You can just use the same code for that. This is also useful if you don't know what the value is going to be. This is a situation that can arise when you are working with information that comes from an external source, like for example user input. You can still instruct the computer to do something with a value without directly stating what that value is, because the variable name functions like a placeholder for the value itself. The code x equals 5 looks a lot like algebra, but it is fundamentally different in several ways. One important difference is that this code is not an equation. In math, an equation is a statement of a fact, and you have to use the facts provided to deduce some unspecified values. In JavaScript, this is more like a command. It is an instruction to give x the value of 5. The value on the right side of the equal sign is assigned to the variable on the left side, and the reverse is never true. So 5 is not given the value of x. In algebra, x equals y is identical to y equals x, but they are not the same in JavaScript. Let's look at an example using two variables. Both values outputted are 7. When we do x equals y, the value of y is 7, and the value on the right side of the equal sign is always assigned to the variable on the left. So 7 is assigned to x. If we switch that to y equals x, both values end up being 5. The value of x starts out as 5, and it is on the right side of the equal sign, so 5 is assigned to y. Note that we are also not allowed to do something like 5 equals x. The value of 5 must always be 5. It is not allowed to be assigned any new values, regardless of what value x has. This assignment is never allowed even if x has a value of 5. In fact, you also cannot do 5 equals 5. This is allowed and perfectly normal in mathematics, but it is completely not allowed in JavaScript. Another difference that you already saw is that the same variable can be assigned different values. It would not be permitted in regular algebra for x equals 5 and x equals 7 in the same math problem. In some higher mathematics, this might be allowed, but in regular algebra, it is not, because 5 equals 7 would be wrong. In JavaScript, this is allowed because these are not statements of facts. These are instructions. X equals 5 is an instruction to give x the value of 5. X equals 7 is another instruction which happens later, and it gives x the value of 7. Also note that sequence matters in programming, so x does not equal 5 and 7 at the same moment in time. X is first equal to 5, and then later x becomes equal to 7. I chose variable names like x and y for these examples specifically to make it look similar to algebra. In regular JavaScript code, variable names should be descriptive and convey information about what kind of value they hold. If you want to have a variable that holds a value like quantity, you can just name it quantity. You can use any name that you want as long as it follows certain rules. One rule is that all variable names must begin with a letter. We are not restricted to using only letters found in the English language, but using other characters is uncommon. You can have numbers in the name, but the name can't start with a number. So toQuantity would not be allowed, but quantity2 is allowed. Spaces are not allowed in variable names. There's a tradition in JavaScript to use something known as camel case. When a variable name is composed of multiple words, the first letter of each word except for the first word gets capitalized, and all the words get combined together without any spaces or punctuation marks. Note that this is a tradition and not an official rule, so you can violate this rule. So you could, for example, make every letter lowercase or every letter uppercase, and that would still work, but the use of camel case is a very well-established tradition, so you definitely should use it. If you don't use camel case in your naming for something like school or for work, someone may actually point that out as if it is a genuine mistake. The only punctuation marks allowed in a variable name are the underscore and $sign. There is also a special situation in which a number sign can be used, but that is a topic for discussion at a much later time. Underscores are allowed in any part of the name, but there is a special tradition related to starting a name with an underscore. We will also not be discussing the meaning of starting a name with an underscore right now. Just be aware that you should probably not name anything like that until you understand what that means. Another important rule of variable names is that it should not be identical to a word that has a special meaning. For example, we already saw that console has a special meaning, so we shouldn't use that as a variable name. This is legal, but it will create many confusing bugs. This code actually makes it impossible to use console log. That is because it has changed the value of console to something that doesn't have a log belonging to it. It now has the value of 5, and 5 does not have anything called log associated with it. There are also some special words that are completely not allowed for use as variable names. These are known as reserved words. For example, break is a reserved word, so we're not allowed to do something like let break equals 5. This is not only confusing if you know what break means, but it is also completely not allowed. We will cover break in a future video. I'm just using that as an example of a variable name that is prohibited. Note that this is only an introduction to the topic of variables. We will revisit this topic numerous times, and I specifically avoided any kind of value besides numbers, but variables can hold many other kinds of values. For example, it can hold text values, and that is something which we will be covering in the next video.